Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimad Bhakti
Grace Lacy, Bhaktivedanta Smaraj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Samsakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gyanam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Asadhara Sadhu Shri Sriman His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anandi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridasa Ki Jai. Shri Rup Sanatana Bhavagana Shri Jiva Baladasragana Shri Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Pramago Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranithananda Shri Gadadhar Shri Vasili Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyam Radha Giri Govindan Ki Jai. Mathuradam Ki Jai. Vrindavan Ki Jai. Mayapurdam Ki Jai. Vrindam Ki Jai. Ganatpuridam Ki Jai. Ayodhidam Ki Jai. ISKCON Radhadesh Ki Jai. Gangamayam Ki Jai. Gunamayam Ki Jai. Srimati Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Shri Radha Gopinath Lalita Vishaka Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Baladesh Mahis Sugati Maharani Ki Jai. Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai. Shri Gauranitai Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. Glory to the Son Gopi. Glory to the Son Gopi. All glory to the Son Gopi. All glory to Shri Guru
Robbie, we should have tried to fix it there.
Hare
The drone's gone, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, he's surviving.
Nayara Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande, all glories to the Son of Gopi, all glories to the Guru and Shri Ranga, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Today, Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Namaste, Sarvasinde, Rani Gauravanti Narame, Nirvishesha, Shri Om Agana Jamananda Sya Ganandana Salakaya Sum Nulitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Visham Sabitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Vidamaya Vidati Swapadakidam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuga Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shra Shri Rupam Sabhudatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vrinana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shiva Sadam Vidam Shah Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandhu Gajare Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namosute Tapatanchan Gaurani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudevi Pranamami Hripriye Panchadava Vajja Kriya Sindhu Devacha Bhajanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Advaita Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 3. Marriage of Sukanya and Shaivana Muni. Text number 21. Katamadiste Katamadiste Bhagatanyata Satam Katamadiste Bhagatanyata Satam Kula Prasute Kula Dushanam Tvidam Kula Prasute Kula Dushanam Tvidam Vivarshi Jaram Yat Apadrapa Kulam Vivarshi Jaram Yat Apadrapa Kulam Vituscha Bhartuscha Na Yas Yadas Tamaha Vituscha Bhartuscha Yas Tamaha Vitamadite Vagatanyata Satam Katamadite Vagatanyata Satam Kula Prasute Kula Dushanam Tvidam Kula Prasute Kula Dushanam Tvidam Varshi Jaram Yat Apadrapa Kulam Varshi Jaram Yat Apadrapa Kulam Vituscha Bhartuscha Yes, it does to my
Katam matiste jagantanyata satam Kula prasute kula dusanam tvadam Vivarshi jaram yad apadrapa kulam Vituscha Bartoscha Yasya Dasamaha.
Please.
Katam matiste bhakatam. Katam matiste bhakatam yata satam.
Katam matiste bhakatam yata satam.
La prasute kula dushanam vidam.
Kula prasute kula dushanam vidam.
Vivarshitaram yat apatrapakulam.
Vivarshitaram yat apatrapakulam.
Tuscha vartuscha nayasi adastama.
Vituscha vartuscha nayasi adastama.
Katam. How? Matite. Your consciousness. Avagata. Has gone down. Anyata. Otherwise. Satam. Of the most respectable. Kula prasute. Oh my daughter. Born in the family. Kula dushanam. Who are the degradation of the family. To what? Idam. This. Vivarshi. You are maintaining. Jaram. A paramour. Yet, as it is. Apatrapa. Without shame. Kulam. The dynasty. Itu. Of your father. Shah. And. Bartu. Of your husband. Shah. And. Nayasi. You're bringing down. Downward into the darkness or hell. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Oh my daughter, who were born in a respectable family, how have you degraded your consciousness in this way? How is it that you are shamelessly maintaining a paramour? You will thus degrade the dynasties of both your father and your husband to hellish life. Purport. It is quite clear that according to Vedic culture, a woman who accepts a paramour or a second husband in the presence of the husband she has married is certainly responsible for the degradation of her father's family and the family of her husband. The rules of Vedic culture in this regard are strictly observed in the respectable families of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas even today. Well, only the Shudras are degraded in this matter. For a woman of the Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya class to accept another husband in the presence of the husband she has married, or to file for a divorce, or accept a boyfriend of paramour, is unacceptable in Vedic culture. Therefore, King Sharyati, who did not know the real facts of Chaivana Muni's transformation, was surprised to see the behavior of his daughter. Om Vishnu Praya Krishna Prasthaya Vidaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswatim Deve Gauravani Vichare Nirvishesha Srinivadi Tasvadyade Sakarna. As I said before, most people find this quite strange, this Vedic culture. That an old man can't even, perhaps we find out he can't even, by himself, can't even go to the lake nearby. Marries this young, beautiful girl. Nowadays, of course, the girl could simply file for divorce and it would be immediately accepted. Matter of fact, the old man would probably be arrested and thrown in jail for 10 years. Now, as I also said before, that the ninth canto is rather an interesting canto. The previous story was Sudumya, who had transformed from a man into a beautiful woman and married and had some children. And then 1 month he was a man, 1 month he was a woman. Now nowadays, becoming a man becoming a woman or a woman becoming a man is rather common. But to change every month, that's really uncommon. That really requires some expertise. And then you were a man 1 moment, and then you have children the next moment. That would be really appreciated, that technique nowadays. And now we find that Shaivana Muni and we have Sukanya, they're married and her chastity, and then we'll have other stories going on. For instance, about the downfall of Subari Muni, and I believe in the ninth canto we also have Lord Ramachandra and Sita. So, religious principles are not forgotten in the Bhagavatam, because religious principles are the foundation for any kind of progress in spiritual life. Even when the Gopis went to dance with Krishna after being attracted by Krishna's flute, then still Krishna told them to go home, because it didn't look good that young girls were in the forest with a young boy in the dead of night. And this would be very degrading to their family. Of course, we understand later on that the Gopis didn't come in their material bodies, they came to dance with Krishna in their spiritual bodies. And that Krishna was only 8 years old. I mean, who knows, maybe nowadays, 8-year-old boys, who knows what. But anyhow, back then, it wasn't considered that an 8-year-old boy was going to have too many affairs with. Of course, the Gopis were also quite young, too. But in any case, the unusual circumstances were cleared up by Shukadeva Goswami because Krishna Maharaj was interested. In any case, Krishna gave extensive moral instructions to the Gopis. Obviously, the moral instructions were not for the Gopis because they had come in their spiritual bodies. Their material bodies that they were presently maintaining were still in bed with their husbands. Therefore, actually, Krishna can't be considered to be immoral because all the Gopis are actually eternally belonging to him. It was the husbands of the Gopis that are considered immoral because they had stolen the Krishna's Gopis. But of course, we also know that Krishna's pastimes are a little inconceivable. But simultaneously with Krishna showing us its inconceivable potencies, spiritual potencies, after all, ordinary people can dance for night of Brahma together. 4 billion, 300 billion years. And I believe the dance is still going on in one sense, because the night of Brahma is still, anyhow, they're dancing their unmanifested bodies. So therefore, it's not an ordinary dance, nor are the Gopis ordinary, nor is Krishna ordinary. But the instructions, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, are actually quite important. Otherwise, the point is that people would take, as they do take it anyhow, that Krishna had decided to act immorally, and therefore his standard of immorality should become the standard for everyone to follow. So if you go into the forest and play your flute and call some young girls to come, then you can take Krishna as your example. You're just following the path of the Supreme. Whatever a great man does, come and follow in his footsteps. So Krishna had to give some moral instructions, because this ninth canto will point out that the very basic, or actually practically throughout the whole Bhagavatam, it keeps on being mentioned again and again, that Pumsa Striya Maitani Bhavam Ekam, that the very basic principle of material existence is aham mameti. I am this body, and things in relation to this body or mind. Ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manite. And therefore one gets a false ego and believes oneself to be the doer of the activities which are actually being carried out by the modes of nature. Or as it said, in the beginning Brahma created man, but man had nothing to do. And so then Brahma created woman, and then he was fully engaged. So that's material energy. Now what does it come from? It's the basic principle is that Urvamalamidakshakam Ashvatam Prabharavyam Jadamsi Yasu Parnami Yasvam Veda Soveda Vid. That there's a banyan tree and it has its roots upward and its branches down, and the hymns are the Vedic leaves, or the leaves of the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the whole Vedas. So the material world is just a perverted reflection. And that's quite inconceivable to us, because if you're on the side of the reflection, then the reality is inconceivable, because it's very hard to understand how in the spiritual world the relationship with Radha and Krishna, which is the topmost relationship in the spiritual world, one of supreme purity. It's like Durvasa Radharani was, I forget exactly what that pastime was. Anyhow, they were asking, Krishna was saying about being a brahmachari, that he's the supreme brahmachari. All the gopis started to laugh. But actually Krishna is the supreme brahmachari. He has, when he was living with 16,108 wives in Dwarka, that although the wives were inconceivably attractive, because they're the supreme goddesses of portion, matter of fact, they're all expansions of the gopis, still they cannot, none of them would attract Krishna, even by their glances or their feminine behavior, etc. Now, it wasn't that Krishna didn't reciprocate with them, and it wasn't that Krishna didn't feel some affection for them, because Krishna feels affection even for the calves in Vrindavan, what to speak of the queens in Dwarka. But for sense gratification, Krishna has absolutely no interest, because even his devotees, when they come to the platform, like even Baba, then moksha lagu krit, the happiness of liberation is lagu krit, is completely insignificant. What to speak of even at the platform of sadhana bhakti, which is within the realm of all the way up to Sakhi, when one doesn't forget Krishna even for a moment, then Krishna akarshi subhada, that the happiness at the state of Sakhi especially is much greater than any conceivable material happiness, including liberation. That in this planet we experience maximum happiness through sense gratification, or that happiness that was multiplied 100 times would be a little of the happiness found on Indraloka. And if that happiness is multiplied 1,000 times, that same happiness is found in Maharloka. And if you multiply that happiness by another 1,000 times, you get up to Tapaloka, Janaloka, and Siddhaloka. And then Brahmaloka is 1,000 times more than that, and Brahman is 1,000 times more than that. So I hope you're all figuring out what math is. But the amount of happiness in Brahman, it was multiplied 100 trillion times when it equals to an atomic fraction and one drop in the ocean of devotional service. So figure that one out. So Sarananda Vishepa. Sandara Anda Vishepa. That is, the happiness so unlimitedly great at the platform of Prema Bhakti, which is only the beginning of real life, that one can't even conceive of material existence anymore. There's no such thing as material existence. Just like when Kishore, who is that? Anyway, there was one great devotee in our line of disciple succession, and he was there, sitting there in Vrindavan, or Navadvip, I forget where, Kishore Das Babaji, and little boys were throwing rocks at him. And his servant tried to stop him. He said, no, those are the coward boys. Don't stop them. And little puppies would come and he'd eat from his plate when he was taking prasadam. And his servant tried to restrain them. He said, no, these are Brajavasis. You can't, it would be an offense to restrain these little puppies from eating. So in other words, he was seeing things a little different from we are, and from most people. Because most people nowadays would appreciate that, he loves puppies, he's a good guy. But from the Vedic point of view, puppies are not considered to be the most clean living entities in the world, and they're not the people that you really want, they're not the living entities you want to eat from your plate. In any case, he was situated in transcendence. All he could see was everything from that point of view. Sandarananda Vishepapa. Inconceivable transcendental happiness. So in such a state of transcendental happiness, material happiness is considered completely tuchava, completely insignificant. One doesn't at all conceive of being involved in such activities. So, the beginning of spiritual life, or the beginning of the progress of spiritual life, is the following religious principles. And in religious principles, there is the main religious principle, tapasya brahmacharyena. If one is agreeing to follow tapasya, that is control of the mind. The first principle is brahmacharya, that one has to come to the platform of thinking about Krishna. Now, as I said, the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world, and therefore, in the beginning, it's not recommended to think about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. Because what to speak of Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, we can't even understand Krishna's fighting with the demons. Those who like to think of Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, who are called, and that's all they like to think of. They think, oh, Krishna's fighting with the demons, that's his negative side. When he wakes up in a bad mood, he kills things. And when he wakes up in a good mood, then he starts playing with the gopis. So we don't like to hear Krishna's bad side. his bad qualities. We like to hear about his good qualities. So therefore they reject practically the whole Bhagavatam, and they just go to the 10th canto, only to the part where Krishna's dancing with the Gopis, because they think, well, that's the part where Krishna, he was the bright side of Krishna. But actually we can't understand the 10th canto. We can't understand anything unless we can understand the difference between spirit and matter. That there's a complete difference. And if we try to understand Krishna's pastimes, jump to Krishna's pastimes with the Gopis, or even simply get involved in Krishna killing the demons without any background of Bhagavad Gita, or the background of the 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, then we're sure to misunderstand what's going on. As I said before, we'll think that Krishna was some thief. Well, actually, he was a killer. As soon as he was born, when he could hardly open his eyes, then the first thing he did was kill his nurse. And then he spent the rest of his childhood killing things. Killed a cow, a bull, killed a calf, killed a snake, killed an ass. I mean, he was just killing everything he got his hands on. Even a horse came to his village and got killed. It wasn't, but Vrindavan was unsafe. And then he organized the mafia and started to steal things. Nothing was safe from Krishna and the mafia, the Vrindavan mafia. And then he started to run after the young girls in Vrindavan, and when they became serious, he fled and started the same killing and stealing people's wives, or stealing girls, in Dwarka and Mathura. First thing he did is, as soon as he got into Mathura, immediately he killed an elephant, he killed soldiers who came to protect the peace, and then he killed some wrestlers, and then he killed his uncle. It was amazing he lived with such a conscience. But then again, he was born to criminals he was born in a jail. So from a materialistic point of view, then they cannot understand Krishna's activities at all. All they can see is from the mundane point of view. Because there's no conception of the difference between matter and spirit, and that the idea is to get free from material energy. And the first freedom is by regulation. By regulation, by religious regulation. And the first religious regulation is marriage. If one has no marriage, if there's no marriage in society, if sex life is unregulated, then there is no possibility of anything else becoming regulated. Because the very basic principle of material existence is the relation between man and woman, which is an imitation of Krishna's pastimes in the spiritual world. As a matter of fact, everything is an imitation of Krishna's pastimes in the spiritual world. So unless we can regulate our gross and mental activities so that they become in line with the progressing towards liberation, then the result is that one will simply become more and more degraded. As I said before, everyone's interest in the material world is simply material enjoyment. No one came here to suffer, although that comes along with coming to the material world. But everyone came here to enjoy, and the basic principle of enjoyment is sex life. In some form or other. If we can enjoy gross sense sex life, then there's profit, adoration, and distinction. Or as I said before, Prabhupada was on his way to the doctor, and in Los Angeles, and when he came back, he passed by a movie theater, and the title of the movie was is there a sex after death? So Prabhupada gave a lecture and mentioned the title of the movie during the lecture. And he advised the devotees to go and tell everyone that they shouldn't worry, because obviously people were concerned. He said, you can tell everyone when you go on the street books today that don't worry, there is sex after death. And 8,400,000 species of life, there's sex. And Prabhupada said if they hear that, then they won't be concerned about death. So that is the principle. Nowadays, of course, people have become proud of declaring their, what would be considered deviations in the Vedic culture, inconceivable. Even 30 years ago when I was in Denmark, there was one Denmark newspaper came out with the headlines, one of the last obstacles towards liberation has been surpassed. And if you read the article, it was that one man, he married his son. That was considered one of the obstacles in progress towards liberation. Of course, that was 30 years ago. That was probably, I don't know if it's considered normal nowadays, but we don't have to go into all the details of the deviations. So when people hear that the Hare, they wrote one book called The Strange Sex Life of the Hare Krishna Movement. You know what the strange sex life of the Hare Krishna Movement is? One lady wrote the book. You're all wondering what this is. Strange Sex Life of the Hare Krishna Movement. And she wrote a book about how the Hare Krishna devotees are celibate. That should be considered a strange sex life. So Kali Yuga is progressing, but still the basic principle of material existence is regulating that relation between man and woman. And by doing that, then there's some possibility of gaining some control over the mind and the senses, and progressing towards, what is that? First of all, there's regulation of sinful activities. Of course, people don't consider that sinful, regulating it. They don't consider meat eating sinful. They don't consider illicit sex sinful. They don't consider gambling sinful. They don't consider intoxication sinful. Now the question is, do they consider anything sinful? And sinful doesn't mean just because it's in the scripture. It means that there's a certain characteristic of the activity that it covers one's consciousness and impels one to do the same activity again and again and again. So certainly those activities, by the Vedic standards, are sinful, and the Vedic culture says, first of all, regulate them. Regulation means to begin with marriage. Marriage is a regulation. Similarly, whispering into the goat's ear that now I'm going to cut your throat, but in the future you can become a human being, and I'll become a goat, and you can cut my throat. That means that there's some regulation, even in meat eating. You have to go to a dark place and a secluded place during the new moon when there's no light, and that way you can kill a goat. So in every aspect, the Vedic culture doesn't deny people's desires for sense gratification, but it tries to regulate them. So by regulating, then one will at least not degrade oneself further. And after some time, by the regulation, and by being part of the Vedic culture, where there's an opportunity to understand about Vishnu, even the ordinary dramas, all the ordinary music, there was no rock music in the Vedic culture, except the only time we heard rock music was when Narada Muni, in his former life as a demigod, was on the heavenly planet surrounded by ladies, and it said that he was singing, probably said rock music. Cinema songs, actually. But actually the cinema songs, you find out, they were songs simply in praise of the demigods, rather than praise of Vishnu. But that was considered so offensive, even in the heavenly planet, just glorifying the demigods, that he was sent down to come to the earth planet as a Shudra. So formally, in the Vedic culture, the music was all about Vishnu, the theater was about Vishnu, everything was surrounding Krishna. So one regulated one's senses to some degree, and at the same, one had an opportunity to absorb one's consciousness more on Krishna and make some progress. So after that, after becoming purified, then one becomes inspired to perform pious activities, so do something positive. And by such pious activities, one becomes elevated to the platform where one can tolerate dualities in material existence. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was going in Navadvip, collecting donations from all the shopkeepers, he came to one astrologer and asked him who he was in his past lifetime. So the astrologer, he started to meditate, because Prabhupada said he was such an advanced astrologer that just by his meditation he could see past, present, and future. So he started to meditate, and he saw this half man, half lion. And he shook his head, and then he saw this enormous turtle with this big mountain on his back, and all the demons and demigods were surrounding him, turning him. And then he saw this man with an axe going around and killing massive amounts of people. So he became disturbed. The astrologer shook his head and saying, well, it's been a bad day, I think I can't concentrate very well. So Chaitanya Maharaj said, well, just think a little bit, try again. So then he saw this little dwarf expanding himself into the whole universe, etc. He said, no, it's been a bad day. So he said, well, who do you think I am? He said, well, I'm going to guess. I think you're the Supreme Personality of God. I think you were the Supreme Personality of God. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, yes, it's been a bad day for you. You're wrong. He said, actually, I know who I was. In my last lifetime, I was a cowherd boy. And because of my pious activity of herding the cows, therefore in this lifetime I've been born as a Brahmin. So the Vedic culture was such that if you followed it, then naturally one would become elevated. It would take some time, but in the course of time one would go from regulating sinful activities to becoming pious, to tolerance, to actually accepting devotional service after liberation, and then rising up to the platform, understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and coming to the perfection of the Vedic of life, which is meditating in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there was a glorious purpose of Vedic culture to eventually rise to the platform of falling in love with Krishna. But it had to start somewhere, and therefore it starts in the chastity of men and women. And therefore it's emphasized again and again and again and again. And fortunately, if one goes to the Bhagavatam, one will not help but notice that there's something here about men and women and how they should relate to each other. And that's the basis of morality. Now, of course, nowadays, we'll probably get, if we present that philosophy, most people will not be able to understand it very well. They'll think it's some kind of antiquated philosophy with no real basis in reality, because they have not even understood the difference between matter and spirit. So that we have to start with. Obviously, we don't start with lecturing people about the relation between men and women. They'll become very disturbed if they hear that, because they have a preconceived conception of it based upon their material conception of life. And therefore, the first thing to do is introduce people to the spiritual conception, something positive. And maybe there's some cultures or some people who will agree that marriage is important. When Prabhupada came to the West, all the men, this is like 50 years ago, the men and women were all living together, and they weren't married. I don't know if that, I guess that's still pretty common nowadays. People, men and women don't get married. Is that still common? Even here in Belgium? And they don't get married. Or someone is married for 20 years, but not necessarily to the same person. So, probably the first thing he did when the men and women who were coming to him about to become serious, he married them. That, taking initiation was a big step for them, but getting married, that was really unusual at that time, especially in Haight-Ashbury. And probably he said men and women just can't live together. So that's quite a challenge nowadays, I'm sure. Or as I've mentioned many times, one of our devotees, she was living with one man for, I forget, 20 years, I think, and they had 3 children. And one day they decided to get married. So she went to her mother and said, "Mom, I think we finally decided to get married." And the mother took the hand of her daughter and she said, "My dear daughter, are you sure he's the right man?" In any case, we have our Vedic culture, and we have our modern culture, and we have to introduce somehow or another the Vedic culture as a path of progress towards understanding and getting the full effect of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Otherwise, it's just like trying to light a fire. The Hare Krishna Mantra will light the spiritual fire, but if we keep on pouring water on it, then it's very difficult to actually light the fire. So though it may seem that the Vedic culture is some kind of far distant culture meant for primitive people in ancient times, and that it has nothing to do with spiritual life or spiritual progress. But actually, without coming to the platform of liberation, which the Vedic culture helps us to come to, then there's no question of actually complete spiritual life, at least. There's no question of living in transcendence. So therefore, we're trying to introduce Vedic culture beginning with proper family life, which is the junction between going back to Godhead and going back to the animal species of life. If society can't maintain proper marriage life, then there's no question of advancing towards liberation. Instead, by that inability to maintain proper family life, there'll be varna sankara and disturbance in society, and the result is that society will become degraded. Or as mentioned here, that if a woman is unchaste, the father's family, her father's family, and her husband's family, father's family, will all become degraded. And that we can see, actually, everyone is. Because of that lack of chastity, everyone is becoming degraded. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
I was wondering, it's very essential in Vedic culture that a wife follows the husband. I was wondering, what if, in the eyes, the wife sees that the husband is doing something and asks something for the wife to do what is maybe not good for spiritual life, or certain wrong direction. So what is the duty of the wife then to do towards the husband? Is it that
Don't follow the husband if the husband's going in the wrong. Generally speaking, if the husband's going in the wrong direction and telling the wife to go in the wrong direction, then according to the 9th canto here or actually the 7th canto in the description of civilization, then the wife is not obliged to follow a man who's fallen. Of course, sometimes we have examples of women following husbands who were fallen, but they themselves were chaste. But if the husband demands that the wife become deviate,
from the principles of Dharma, well, that's the question. Because there are other factors too that have to be taken into consideration, but generally that's the factor. But it's a little complicated, I don't think we can get into all the details right now. But the husband is supposed to, the whole idea of marriage life is to elevate the husband and the wife, so that they can, together they can assist each other in spiritual progress. So it's very unfortunate when that's not the case. Therefore, husbands should be trained, there should be good brahmachari training beforehand. Otherwise, it's very difficult if there's not good brahmachari training to have a good household. And if there's no good householders, you can't have good vanaprasthas or sannyasis. If one is not, one doesn't get a higher taste of Krishna consciousness in household life, then, and one renounces household life, then many times one will simply perform and look for another household life to try and get some happiness from. In any case, it's more complicated than I can talk about right now. Yes?
Maharaj, what's a little bit confusing to me is that because the gopis, they hear Krishna's flute and they go to Krishna, and somewhat were obstructed from going and left their body.
Yes.
How?
Well, because Yogamaya, there are different gopis who join Krishna in his Leela. Some of them were the Munichari gopis. They were coming from the Munis who met Balaramachandra in, I guess it was Naimisharanya, in the forest. And when Balaramachandra, these rishis, when Balaramachandra was there, they were actually, their mood was conjugal. They wanted to take Balaramachandra as their husband. But Balaramachandra said, no, in this incarnation, I only have one wife. But in my next, another incarnation, I can accept all of you in Madhurya Rasa. Others are the Rishi, there's the Rishi Chari Gopis, Muni Chari Gopis. The Vedas personified also in the incarnated. So there are different types of gopis. Some of them were on the stack, they were Nityasiddha gopis on the platform of Prema. And they, Yogamaya, arranged it so they immediately went to join Krishna when he played his flute. Others who were only on the platform of Bhava, who weren't completely purified and elevated and experienced in Krishna in devotional service. Krishna had increased, Yogamaya increased their desire to be with Krishna by having some obstacle in the way. Because if you want something, it's like there's a chocolate there. Or let's give an example. That if you, if there's a chocolate and you're just a little bit out of the reach, you really take a real stretch to get there. Just out of here. So similarly, the gopis, they were almost with Krishna, but they were being restrained to increase their desire to be with Krishna. And some of them, they increased their desire so much that they left their bodies and went to join Krishna in their spiritual bodies. So that would just increase their desire, that there was some seemingly obstacle to their being with Krishna. So that they became mature and eventually they became elevated to the platform of prema. Anything else? Okay, and you're going to write Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai, Lord,
Thank you.
I've that will be the solution to my issue. I was going to ask that in parallel. Yes, definitely. Because people are so coming to us.
So then actually, we have the president, and we have Wednesdays like so Mahadev on Monday. So Mahadev then on Wednesday.
And then you take Thursday or something.
Hare
Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Rama, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radhadesh, Sri Radhadesh, Sri Radhadesh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare 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 Krishna,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya